We can chat for like an hour and then find out I didn't push record, and that would be horrible.
I know.
So I looked over all of your information. I don't know if you've had a chance to kind of look up and see who I am or not. So
I didn't. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So my podcast is mental health, which is basically I talk about obviously the hell that can happen in our mind because we allow it. And I know you understand that from what I have read of what you talk about. I don't go off of like scripted questions or anything like that, just simply because I think that makes the conversation not flow. Is there anything, I know you have the many voices, one truth, anything else that you want, anything that you want me specifically to mention or talk about, or?
Well, a direction I'd like to go, because I did read what came in the email, like, mental health and, the things that were in there. And so with regards to putting ourselves through hell, one of the directions I'd like to talk about is, the neurochemical aspect of that. Like one of the reasons, psychology will say people do that because that's what they're used to, and that's true. But there's a component that's not often talked about in psychology, and that's the neurochemistry behind it.
Okay, I like that because I do believe that it's misconceived that people are weak if they're depressed or whatever the case may be, right? And so I love talking about the fact that there's science behind it showing that that's not necessarily the case. How do you want me to introduce you?
Tracy Terrace, licensed marriage and family therapist, owner of a group private practice in Santa Clarita, California, which is in North Los Angeles, and author of Many Voices, One Truth, of the book Many Voices, One Truth.
Yeah, I grew up in Lancaster. So I know Santa Clarita. Not that I'm proud to say I grew up in Lancaster, because it's not like
where are you now?
I'm in Orange County. I'm in Tustin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I like Santa Clarita. Like Santa Clarita was like our special, like back then it was like the nice place to go. I don't know how it is now, but
it's even nicer. Like they've really put some effort into it. You don't really have to go to the valley anymore because Santa Claritians would go to the valley.
Yes.
Not really. You can still do that, but
we used to call it going down the hill, and I'm like, we didn't even go down a hill. I don't know why we would call it going down the hill, but that's what we would do. Okay, so I'll say Tracy Terrace. It's Terrace, right? Licensed marriage family therapist who has a private practice in Santa Clarita, California, which is in North LA County, and is an author of Many Voices, One Truth, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so that we want to talk about the neurochemical aspect of it. Anything else that you can think of? I know that you are specifically, at least on your website, talk about like the Christian part of it or the higher power. Is that something that you want to bring up or not?
Sure, if you want to. I'm best off the cuff.
Okay.
So whatever, we can just have a conversation and whatever comes to your mind.
Yeah.
Let's go from there, because I think it's more authentic too. And I like off the cuff because when people send me questions, I find that I'm trying to remember how I answered it when I looked at the question instead of whatever's coming to me in the moment. Yeah.
Love that. Okay, perfect. So I can edit anything out. So if for some reason something happens, I can edit it out. Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna move this.
Okay.
My junk basket. Great. All righty.
Can you hear in the background that my cleaner is cleaning or no? Okay, perfect. You never know, right? Okay.
Well, I have there's a lady, a therapist upstairs that she works with kids on the spectrum, and it's right above my office. So if you hear like a and then let me know and we can just do the question early. But if you don't, some people say they don't hear it. So
yeah, so currently I don't, but I'll let you know if I hear it in the background. Okay. All right. Thank you for joining the Mental Health Podcast. This is your host, Barbie Moreno, and I have with me Tracy Terrace, who's a licensed marriage family therapist and has a private practice in Santa Clarita. Let me redo it. Okay. Thank you for joining me on the Mental Health Podcast. This is your host, Barbie Moreno. Barbie Moreno. I don't know why I never mess up and all of a sudden I'm messing up. Okay. Thank you for joining me on the Mental Health Podcast. This is your host, Barbie Moreno. I have with me Tracy Terrace, who is a licensed marriage family therapist. She has a private practice in Santa Clarita, California, which is North LA County. And she's also the author of Many Voices, One Truth. Thank you for joining us, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Barbie, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So before we get into, we want to talk about the neurochemical aspect of it today. But before we get into that, can you give me an idea of maybe a little bit about yourself and why you got into therapy work?
Yeah, I got into therapy because it worked for me. Once I reached adulthood, I realized that there were some things from my childhood and things from my past and my family of origin that I needed to heal from, process, grieve, all of the above. So I went to therapy and it actually helped me. And so I had no plans on becoming a therapist myself. I would actually refer my friends and family to my therapist, who is Dr. Barbara Cohen in Tarzana, California. And they would go and see her. And then a few years later, I just had this thought that I should be a therapist, and it resonated with me. So I called my husband and three of my closest friends at the time and ran that by them. And each one of them thought it would be a great idea. They thought that it would be something that would come easily to me and that I would be really good at. And so I decided to apply for a program, Azusa Pacific, because it's a Christian university. I'm a Christian, and I wanted to marry the two, psychology and my faith, with, the idea of helping people. And so the rest is history. I got into the program and jumped through all the hoops, got the education and training, and shortly after getting licensed, I opened my private practice.
Love that. And what made you write your book?
My clients like listening to, like the book is about all of the different voices we hear. It really is a book about belief and what we choose to believe. So I use the analogy of the broadcast networks I grew up with. When I was little, we only had ABC, NBC, CBS, and PBS. There was cable, but in my household, we didn't have cable. So if you were watching anything at any given moment, you were listening to a broadcast from one of those stations. So in the book, I use the analogy of ABC, the analogy of ABC, the different networks, with the networks that play in the heads of most of our heads, like my clients, myself, most people that I talk to. And the name of those networks in the book are Self, Satan, Society, and Savior. And so it's about choosing who you believe. In the beginning of the book, I talk about one of the reasons I wrote it was we had a family crisis where one of my baby sisters had a stroke at a super young age. And some of the things that were coming up for me, some of the things I was believing, caused me to kind of question, well, what do I believe? What is at the core of some of my own belief systems? And then couple that with what I hear in my practice, I decided to write a book about the different voices that we hear and how to navigate those, how to differentiate between those, and choose the voice that is your creator, to choose to believe that you are who you were created to be.
And that thing that you believed was, if I remember from reading correctly, that somebody had read your palm basically and said that you had a short lifespan, right?
Yeah, my mom looked at my palm and told me that I was going to die young. And I believed that my whole life. Like once I grew up and I got my own therapy and everything, I stopped believing it, or so I thought. Like I thought I had dealt with that. And that's the thing about healing. You can deal with something to a certain level, but some things are just so deep that you might go to therapy, be in therapy for about 6 months or so and feel good, like get some healing. And then something will come up that shows that that problem runs at a deeper level. So the fact of my young sister, who was like 37 years old at the time, having the stroke, it brought up for me the deeper belief that, oh, I still believe, I still have this fear, or at least have this fear that I might die young. At the time I think I was 41 at the time. She was 37. So we were both still young,
Yeah.
and so I just kind of brought it to the surface. Her incident brought that belief for me to the surface, and I really had to confront it.
And I feel like, so I'm somebody who's been in therapy for, several number of years, and it seems like, and I've done a lot of self work, but it also seems like it's an ever going thing. Like people who think that you can go to therapy for a year and then everything is perfect. I just feel like it's a misbelief, right? Like it's a process. You're always growing, always changing, always uncovering things that you had no idea were
Yeah.
sitting below the surface. And so I like the name Many Voices, One Truth, because we do all have these thoughts in our head. We have things our parents told us, most of our life growing up. And I mean, if you were told you were going to die young, then your whole life you're petrified you're going to die young, I would imagine.
I was, and like I said, I thought I had dealt with it as an adult, but not to the level that I really needed to. Like there are things that run deeper than others. Like you might go to therapy and, navigate something and process it and undo whatever needs to be undone in a year. But there's other things. I mean, because you've had a whole lifetime, you have a whole family of origin. There's things that were poured into you over decades of your life. And so therapy can help you to tease all of that out, figure out what's true and what's your truth, and get to the other side so that you're not debilitated by something or some label someone else put on you, even if that someone else was a parent.
Right. And oftentimes it is, right.
Oftentimes,
Yeah, I was like 90%. Well, and that brings us where we want to go into the neurochemical aspect of everything, because for me, I've heard a lot of people who say they don't want to go to therapy because they're not weak. They can solve it themselves. They don't believe that they need therapy. They think that they're just fine. They can fix it themselves. And oftentimes there's a shame that comes with working on your mental health. We're getting better, but I don't think that we're still in this place where it's acceptable to talk about the fact that you go to therapy and that you need somebody else to, guide you along your path. So give me some information on what you have learned about the neurochemical aspect of it.
Yeah, well, just to address what you were talking about with regards to reasons why people don't go, sometimes it is shame-based, and people have these deep beliefs about themselves that, shame has more to do with there's something wrong with me. So some people don't want to go and sit in somebody's office and have that, affirmed or validated. But one of the things I'd want to say to your listeners is to shop around, get online and put in some criteria for a therapist, and trust yourself to find the right fit for you, because most therapists, hopefully no therapist, but I can't speak for everyone, will judge you. Most of us see whatever is going on or whatever has happened as symptoms of something deeper. And our job is to help you figure out what that something deeper is so that you can process it and release it and get on with your life in the way that you want it to get on with your life. But one of the other reasons that's more along the lines of neurochemistry that people resist coming in is because on some level, they know that something will be uncovered, something will be revealed. And in our day-to-day life, we get used to feeling a certain way.
Right.
So people that are used to grief or stress or sadness, sometimes there's a hesitancy to let that go. On the forefront of your mind, you want to heal, you want to get through whatever it is you want to get through, but your brain and your body will often act against you, meaning that if you're used to hormones like the stress hormones of cortisol or homocysteine, that's what your body is used to running on. That's why it's hard for people to learn how to meditate, how to pray, how to be in silence, because when you do that, you shift your body chemistry. You shift the chemistry from stress and cortisol to peace and tranquility. You shift to serotonin and dopamine, which are the hormones that are responsible for, feeling good and feeling alive. And as much as people want that, you have to force yourself to get used to those chemicals coursing through your body rather than the cortisol. Because as long as you're used to what you're used to, you're going to keep getting what you've got. The way to break that is to force yourself to turn around and do something different. And therapy is a good tool for that because it forces you to bring up all this stuff to the surface so that you can grieve it. But in the grieving it, what happens in therapy when you are with a therapist that is good at their job and that is full of empathy, you will receive what we call a corrective emotional experience. So say, for instance, when you've had an emotional reaction to an experience out in the world or out in your family life, 20 years later, you come to therapy and you talk with the therapist about that experience, she or he provides what's called a corrective emotional experience, in that they sit with you, they empathize, they ask you questions, they get you to catharsis it out by getting you to talk about it and process it and get it out of your system. And they accept you and validate you and affirm you, which is what should have happened when you were little. And so being in therapy provides for that. And so what happens is there's a chemical called oxytocin, and it's the bonding chemical. It's what mothers, release when they have babies, is what people, when they're in intimate relationships, they release that. But it's not just about, intimacy and sex. It could be any intimate relationship where you're being validated and affirmed and your troubles are being held for you to look at and, pick apart and then, process them away. That you can have an experience with oxytocin. And so what our aim as therapists is to present a certain way of being in relationship in the therapy room so that people will go out in the world and look for that. Look for people who are validating and affirming. Because if you grew up with invalidation and you grew up in stressful relationships, more than likely that's what you've surrounded yourself with, even in jobs. Like people even will unconsciously pick a job where those same dynamics are created or recreated in that office. And so our hope is for people to learn how to understand that they are worthy and have value. And when you really believe that about yourself, you start to draw those other kinds of people toward you instead of the people that have constantly recreated the hurt that you grew up with.
Do you think that there's an unconscious fear that if I get better, the people who are in my life, I may lose?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And sometimes that's even conscious or subconscious. Like, your conscious mind is what you're aware of and what you're attending to in the moment. So right now, our conscious mind is at work, and our subconscious mind is we're aware of something. Like I'm aware that after this, I have a few clients before it's time for me to go home. I have to take my dog to the training, but I'm not really attending to that. I'm aware that there's cars outside and there's wind outside, but it doesn't come into my conscious unless I attend to it. Same thing for you. But in our unconscious mind, nobody knows what's in there. Our unconscious mind is always tending toward health and wholeness by letting us know what's there. And so there's lots of people that will want to go to therapy and then have this nagging fear that if I'm different, then my family will no longer accept me. And honestly, that might be the case for a while, because if you heal, if you present as different, then the people around you and the people that you grew up with, that's like holding up a mirror. You're not doing it on purpose, but they see that there's hope for them, but there may be a fear attached. There may be a fear attached to doing the work or not wanting to do the work for whatever reason, and a resentment for you doing it. Like, who do you think you are that, you're going to go out and get this therapy and come back and not be heavy laden with all the things we've always been heavy laden with,
Right. And if you're surrounding yourself with the comfortable environment that you have become used to, and you have these physical hormones that are already like in that space, right? And then you change things up. Physically, you're changing things up, and then the other people from the outside questioning you, it makes it hard to want to continue. And I think that's why a lot of people don't continue to go through it.
Yeah. And that's why it's important to surround yourself with community of people that are in the same path as you. And sometimes you can find that on the job. Sometimes you can find that in houses of worship, where there's, a spiritual community that you can connect with. Usually most people will have at least one or two friends in their group, because even though we may be consciously and subconsciously drawn to people that just kind of recreate the same dynamics, there is a part of us that want to be whole. And so there may be, people that, you're drawn to, that you want in your space, that would validate who you are becoming. And it's not that you're necessarily becoming that, it's who you already are, but it's without all of the heartbreak and all of the pain. Like, for instance, like I used to be a very anxious person, and I would move around really fast and on the go on. And that worked for me because it allowed me to get a lot of things done. It allowed me to accomplish a lot of things in my life. But curiously, all of the people that were closest to me were super chill. We're all laid back. Even my firstborn daughter, all laid back people, right? And it's because deep down, I was that too. I just trained myself to be frenetic and anxious and all over the place. And then once I started my own healing process, some of that started coming off. I'm still more A-type than most of my friends and things like that, but I'm a lot more, subdued, so to speak, but not in a negative way.
And I think society likes it when we're like that high motivated, person who's going. I know in my business career, before I got into this type of work, I was a super high achiever, always in leader club, like all of these different things. And so they continue to, give you rewards for this behavior. And so because you get rewarded for this behavior and everybody's like, dang, she's good at what she does. She's the best. She's number one. She's this, she's that, or whatever. Then you want to continue to do it. However, like you were talking about with the body, there's the cortisone, the stress that comes from it, and it can literally eat away at your body and make you physically ill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that your brain will reward you too. And with the dopamine. And so that's, you want to pay attention to that, and so we do pay attention to it on a subconscious level. And so then we keep going. But the reason you want to pay attention to it is you want that to be a source that's coming from who you really are and just your presence and your being instead of your doing, because that could happen too. Like when you're doing meditation and you're in states of prayer, you get all of that calm, and it's just from the internal rather than I've done this accomplishment and I'm getting these accolades, because then you put yourself in a hamster wheel where you always have to be accomplishing something or going after something.
And you identify with that's who you are.
Yeah, you identify with that's who you are, and it's not. It's what you do.
So when we talk about many voices and the things in our minds, right, going on, there's this like conscious movement where they're saying, basically you have to have no mind or clear mind, no thought. And I personally have a hard time with that, because our mind, in my opinion, physically is not made to have no thought, right? Like its whole idea is that it's supposed to keep you safe. It's on, it's always analyzing different things. And so I know there's a lot of people who have tried meditation, and they've tried even therapy, and they still feel like they're failing because they have voices in their head. And so what would you say to that as somebody who works with people, and how do you tell them that that's okay, that's normal?
Yeah, well, I'm with you. I don't think that there's, any such thing as no mind. That would be concerning. And meditation is hard when you have a lot going on and you're used to having a lot going on. So I teach my clients a couple of different ways to meditate. Like one is using an app where there's a guided meditation. And, I prefer if people outside in nature or in a very quiet, place alone, where they don't have to worry about sitting through the 15-20 minutes, because they're listening to the person on the app doing some guiding, and they're bringing their thoughts to what the person is saying. And so you just let yourself be there in the moment. That's one tool that I use. The other tool that I use is something called block meditation, where, let's say if you're going to do 10 or 15 minutes, the first 2 or 3 minutes is something called grounding. So you would split this meditation into 3 blocks. The first block is grounding, where you're taking in what's coming in through your 5 senses. So I tell them to start with their eyes. And, you look around the room and you mentally name the things that you see. I see a window, I see a lamp, a couch, my computer, and then you move to your ears and you attend to what the sounds are that are coming in. And for me right now, it's the silence of the room, or the AC, the cars outside, the wind outside, and then you move to your nose. So it's like this, and you name the smells. I smell the rose lotion on my hands and the way my office smells. And then you move to your mouth. What do I taste? I taste the water that I had a second ago when I was drinking the water. And then I feel my bum sitting on this chair. I feel my feet in my shoes, the denim on my jeans. And you take about, 2 or 3 minutes to just mentally drop down into yourself, to ground it, because that helps you to ground into the present moment. One of the reasons meditation is so hard is because we do have all these thoughts that's going on. So if you ground yourself, and you can do this anywhere, it doesn't have to be in block meditation. It could be standing in a line at the grocery store or at the bank, and, in the middle of a panic attack, like bringing yourself down so that
That's what I was going to go with, that one on a panic attack, because that seems like that would be an amazing tool.
Oh, yes, it is, because it forces you to bring your mind in instead of being out in either your environment or just whatever's playing around in your head. So then the second part of that block meditation would be, let's say about 5 minutes of picking a focus word, and what that means is you think of a word, and then you just allow yourself to see that word. Write it on a chalkboard in the screen of your mind, or write it out in space. Like if you're on the Starship Enterprise and there's a word out on the black space with the stars, with just that word, whether it's focus, whether it's clarity, whether it's peace, whatever the word is. And you want to just keep your mind. And most of us have like watches, either Fitbits or Apple Watches or whatever. You could set a timer when you're first doing this, so that the timer goes off after the 2 minutes, and you set it for the 7 minutes. And then for the last 8 minutes of the 15 minutes, you want to visualize something that you want in your life. So if you're visualizing harmony within your family, what would that look like? Would that look like, 2 or 3 times a week, or every night we have dinner together? Would it look like sitting down, having a family conversation? Would it look like travel? Whatever it is you want to see in your life, visualizing it, and sitting with it for that last 8 minutes of the session. And so like when I teach people using those 2 tools, eventually they learn to meditate on their own without any aids whatsoever.
So do you think that this is taught a lot by therapists?
I think so.
Because I have a very mindful, really, this is interesting because I haven't heard of this before.
Can you ask that question again? Because your the internet.
Looks like we got cut out. So we're saying, do you think that this is okay, better? Is it better?
Yeah, but you're still frozen. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, let's see.
Okay.
Okay.
So do you think that other therapists will teach these tools? And
yes.
I asked that question. Oh, I think, am I still cutting?
Yeah, you're still cutting out. Well, what I heard was, do you think other therapists use
Hopefully
these?
it'll stop it.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, it'll probably jump in. You'll probably fall into it.
How are we now? Are we better now or no?
You're still freezing. Your face
Sorry.
is still...
Okay, let's see. Hopefully when let me know when you can hear me speaking and it's not all messed. Okay.
I can hear you speaking.
Can you hear me? You just can't see me? Let me turn my video off.
Oh, I can't see you. So I can see you now. I can see.
Okay, can you hear me too?
Yeah, but there is a delay, like your mouth isn't moving. But yeah. I mean, take your time. Let me see. Hold on. today. Yeah, I have someone coming in at 4, so we have a few minutes.
Okay, perfect. How about now? Are we pretty good?
It's pretty good. There is a delay. It sounds like you're under.
So let's get out and rejoin
Okay, okay,
and rejoin. Yeah.
okay.